Hello, I wanted to review with you the workplace scenarios assignment and some of my comments pertaining to that assignment. You might want to open it for reference to follow along. If you may remember, scenario one was about establishing rapport with your team. My first recommendation is listen, ask thoughtful questions to actively engage, to understand what your colleagues' passions are. I met one fellow years ago that said that he paid attention to the visual cues, similar to a lot of our video calls together. You notice in the background, I have a lot of my travel books. So you probably could size up pretty quickly that I'm passionate about travel. Um, Obviously, you're going to participate in different intern events, probably attend affinity group meetings. You also should connect with MLT and school alumni prior to starting the internship. I had one fellow years ago at a Big Four accounting firm say that she assembled a group of interns to participate as a team in the company's philanthropic breast cancer walk that summer. And I thought that was such a great way to demonstrate that she was committed to the firm aside from the work. And she also said it was a great way to connect with senior leaders informally during the walk. And then lastly, share. You prepared a lot of examples for your interviews to convey the skills that are valued by the employer. It's the same when you walk into the workplace in terms of sharing your passions. Think of some stories that you can share over coffee chats, over lunch, or in the workplace with your colleagues that are appropriate, that really convey who you are and what you're passionate about, because you're very interesting, or so I think so. The second example was about an intern that was invited to write an event by HR, yet had to prioritize work first. No one would argue that work comes first, yet if it's possible to balance both events, do. Examples that I think of is years ago, a lot of fellows that intern on Wall Street, they would participate in SEO. SEO had generally 2 networking events each week. So those fellows interning, let's say in investment banking, had to leave work by 5 to attend those events. And that's rare to leave work so early when you work in that industry. So they would try to balance both. They would typically go to the event, leave the event early, go back to work late to get the work done. So I think first it's important to clarify with your manager, sometimes when they say it's due at the end of the day, get it done by the end of the day, that might mean they just need it first thing in the morning. So it might be good to kind of gauge what the actual real-time deadline is, and then gauge if you can do both. Second, I think the issue here in this situation was communication. So I have an anecdote. A fellow years ago of mine that was interning an MLT partner, when we would connect throughout the summer, he would lead me to believe that he was on track to receive a full-time offer. And I think, rightfully so, he was getting a lot of great feedback about his work. But at the end of the summer, he didn't get the offer. And I can't make this up. Only a couple of months later, the CP team met with the recruitment team of that firm. The head recruiter was quite vocal, and she asked who coached that fellow. And I said me, and she had a lot of constructive feedback to share about that particular fellow. And what the issue was is that she felt she was the one that recruited him into the firm. And then she scheduled a lot of, or orchestrated a lot of intern events throughout the summer. And also she emailed this fellow, like, how are you doing? What's your progress? And he was MIA. He was unresponsive to her. So he made a big mistake to think that his manager, his team, were the only individuals that he had to satiate or meet those expectations. There's no argument that your manager is going to be the loudest voice at the table at the end of the summer to determine whether or not you get a full-time offer. But don't misunderstand that won't be the only voice at the table to determine if you get an offer. So communicate. Figure out if there's a way that you can compensate. I'm sorry I can't make the event. I'll do my best to make the next event. Or would you like to meet for coffee or meet tomorrow so I can update you on how I'm doing? This scenario reminds me of anything that could take you out of the workplace. For example, a lot of fellows this year I know applied to SVMP at Harvard. When you're gone a whole week, that's a lot. So I've seen fellows get offers who attended SVMP, and I've seen fellows not get offers who have attended SVMP. So I don't think SVMP is the sole reason you get or don't get an offer. Yet I think a lot of how you manage being out of the office for the week could determine that. So So my recommendation is when you walk in day one, a lot of you got the approval from the recruiter months ago if you could apply to SBMP. They said yes, but don't walk in assuming you can still go. You want to, in week one, when you meet with your manager, educate them about SBMP and ask again. It's another ask. Is it okay that I go? I was approved to go and I was invited to go, but can I go? The other thing is you may want to compensate for other interns and more junior level colleagues because when you're absent that week, then they can pick up the slack for you. The third scenario, quite frankly, is somewhat of an impossible situation. You would assume that your employer would support you going on coffee chats and networking throughout the organization, yet you just don't know. One fellow a couple of weeks ago mentioned, I might not understand the stresses that my manager's under. My manager might have a looming deadline that I wasn't aware of. And your manager might say, where's my intern? So again, I think this is key. You want to prevent this from happening versus kind of dealing with it after it happens. So if you can schedule such meetings before, after work, or during lunch, that's ideal. That's not always the case. Certainly if you're networking or meeting up with someone outside of your summer organization, this is important. You don't want to meet with them during work hours. But I understand that's not always possible. So I think more importantly, as an intern, it's easier to ask for permission than forgiveness. So I would ask your manager, so-and-so asked that I grab coffee. Maybe use that as an opportunity to give them a quick update on where you're at with whatever project you're on, and then ask if you can go. And then lastly, my hope is that you guys always throughout your career work with managers that fully support your development and you building your network. That's not always the case. You might work with some managers that feel somewhat threatened that you have access to individuals throughout the organization that they don't have access to. For whatever the reason, right? Your firm might just really support intern development. Maybe it's an alum from your school, an MLT alum. But at the end of the day, convey to them that you're a good representative of them and of the team. Maybe give them a little update in your weekly update meetings. I met so-and-so for coffee. Here are my key takeaways. It was such a fruitful chat. I also share with them some of the great things that we're doing to kind of convey that you're a good rep for the team. Scenario 4, this is a really common scenario, especially when you're new on the job. You might be assigned something. It's your first go around. You're new to the role. You don't know what you don't know to ask the right questions on initial assignment. So I can't stress enough how important proactive listening is. It still to this day surprises me how few fellows take consistent notes at MLT events and or on our monthly coach calls. It's really important. Take fierce notes. You can always disregard useless notes later, but at least then you'll capture some of the information that's key. Anytime you're going anywhere, to refill your water bottle, going to the elevator to leave for the evening, you want to make sure that you're capable of taking notes, whether it be on your phone or a pen and paper, because you never know when someone's going to relay a key resource or data point for you. So always listen and always be ready to take notes. I'm a big fan of the 80-20 rule. So let's say your deadline's tomorrow. I think it's okay to say, I'm going to proactively get started on this. But is it okay if I check in with you later today to ensure I'm on the right track? And after you sink your teeth into a project, at that point, you're kind of going to recognize what you don't know, and you'll have the right questions to ask when you follow up with your manager later in the day. That's better than going back to them again and again with more and more questions. And lastly, I would really leverage all of your resources. I think you should only ask your manager only questions that he or she can answer, whether it be using the company's intranet, a Google search, leveraging other interns or other junior level hires. I think it's important that you exhaust all of your resources to try to find the answers to your own questions. And examples at the start of CP, I know we throw a lot at you, but a lot of fellows ask me questions that I know were already answered, whether it be in my cohort email or the CP newsletter. It'll be much quicker and easier for me to simply answer their question, but I'll a lot of times take the time to go back and dig for where the answer was and sort of tip that fellow off that was answered in the CP Weekly newsletter. I do that deliberately because I want to teach you guys to fish versus feed you fish. This example also reminds me of sometimes you have multiple people assigning you multiple projects, and they're unaware of all that you have on your plate. What a lot of people do is they just say yes, they keep saying yes, and then they fail to meet all expectations because nobody is Superman or Superwoman, right? So I think it's important to communicate. Sometimes common sense is going to dictate what comes first. So you might just communicate with sort of priority B. So-and-so asked that I get this done by the end of the day. Is it okay if I tackle this first thing tomorrow? But if you're really unsure, I think it's okay to push back and say, so-and-so asked that I get this done by the end of the day. How would you recommend I best prioritize? And then, of course, if manager B claims that their project should be prioritized, then you probably want to follow up an email manager A, CCing B, and say, so-and-so asked that I get this done by the end of the day. Is it okay if I tackle this later or after that? Scenario 5 is about you kind of coming into the experience and you were really excited about it, yet now you're bored. This reminds me of an anecdote back in 2008. You were probably quite young, but I was coaching for MLT, and I had a number of fellows that were interning at Lehman Brothers, 3 exact. But them, along with a lot of other fellows working on Wall Street, were complaining they didn't have enough work to do. And I couldn't understand why. Obviously, we all understood why in September when Lehman Brothers crumbled. So that was an issue. So I think a lot of people's answer when they're bored is right away they want to step up and help out other teams. But if you can imagine, some managers, like in that situation I just gave in 2008, some managers might have an understanding of the bigger picture and might really be concerned about job security. They may not want an intern to advertise that there's not a lot of workflow on their team or in their group. So make sure that you okay it with your manager before you go around and ask other teams if you can help them. Propose. I think a lot of people gripe about, not being thrilled about their work or not having enough work. But I think it's important that you come to the table with 1 to 3 suggestions of how you can add value. Nobody knows what you're capable of doing other than you. And others might just not think of it because they have their own worries. I also think job shadowing is a great way to network, but also a great way to learn lots of different functional roles and kind of, trying to find what's right for you, specifically if that group or team isn't. And then lastly, I said to those fellows back in 2008, what did you hope to work on this summer? I suggested it in my internship action plan video. I think all of you want to look at your resume now before you start the internship or the job and really evaluate what do you want to get out of the experience? What does that resume need to look like at the end of the summer for you to be the candidate that you want to be and really seize the full-time job that you want? Even in consulting, if you accept the conversion offer with your existing firm, a lot of it's about getting on the right client engagement. So again, what does the resume need to look like for you to get staffed on the right team, the right client engagement, or get the right projects, the projects that you want to work on? So I said to those fellows in the summer of 2008, what did you hope to work on? And they said, well, I thought that I would assemble a pitch book or create a model or a pivot table. And I said, well, you can do those things. And you can do those things even if you don't deliver them to a client and garner feedback from your colleagues and truthfully add it to your resume. So again, your resume looks like the same resume regardless of what's going on at the organization or the lack of workflow. Scenario 6. Scenario 6 is about you kind of having this desire to switch teams. Admittedly, in all my years in MLT, I can count on one hand the number of times that I've heard of a fellow saying, hey, I want to switch teams, and they were switched. As most of you know, typically you were hired for a purpose and to be on a specific team. And so your goal should be to think long-term and understand that if you don't excel in your current role, it's going to be less likely that you get a full-time offer. And if you don't get that full-time offer, it's going to be much harder to lobby for an interview with another group, another team for full-time. So really your first priority, no matter what, should be to excel at your current role to ensure that you get that full-time offer. That's going to give you a lot more leverage to negotiate later in the summer. Definitely you should network inside and outside of your organization. Don't lose touch with all those recruiters that you met at, MLT events, that you met in campus recruitment, because then when you reach back out to them saying, hey, I just applied for a full-time job, they're not going to say, who is this? I had a fellow years ago that was invited a second summer back to his organization in the same role, and he got great feedback on his work. Yet in his midsummer performance review, they said, you're not assertive enough. And right away to me, that was a red flag. So I recommended to him immediately to start reconnecting with a lot of the recruiters that he met throughout the recruitment season. And at the end of the summer, I'm sharing the story as you probably know how it's going to end. He did not get the conversion offer from his summer internship site. However, he did get a very competitive offer from a competitive firm in the same exact type role. But that wouldn't have happened, I don't think, if he wouldn't have planted the networking seed midway through his summer. And then lastly, it's never about what you're not getting to do or the glass is half empty. It's always speaking from the glass is half full. So I really love what I'm doing, yet I want to learn more about X or Y to see if people will connect you with other individuals throughout the firm to kind of build your brand. So mapping project timelines, scenario 7, I think is kind of an impossible situation. You figure that you're doing what's best. Your manager's out of the office. You need some key data or information for you to complete a project. And you think you're doing the right thing by going to your boss's boss. But just keep in mind that anything that might make your boss look bad, like they dropped the ball or didn't provide you with key data or information, probably isn't a good idea. So I first, when your boss is, let's say, is upset with you in this situation, my first recommendation is pause and evaluate, will your reaction hurt or help your cause? And your cause is to get the offer, the full-time offer. So always really evaluate the repercussions of your reaction before you react. Sometimes as an intern, it's easier to be sorry than be right. I think communication's key. I've mentioned it in this presentation, also in the internship action plan video. In week 1, you want to meet with your manager. If your manager doesn't request that meeting, you want to ask for it. And in that meeting, in my last cohort email, I sent you guys a link to the CP resource site with a list of questions that you can ask your manager in that first meeting. Now, obviously, you guys are already aware of the key competencies that are valued at your organization. But the first bucket I'd want to fill is I'd want to understand what their expectations are. Are these the same key competencies that your manager is measuring you against throughout the summer? What differentiates a great intern deserving of a full-time offer from one who isn't? The second bucket that I'd want to fill is I'd want to really understand what their preferred communication style is. Are they the type of manager that isn't going to be traveling, that essentially is going to assign the bulk of your work? They're going to kind of know what you're doing day in and day out. Maybe they're even somewhat of a micromanager. Maybe they want you to step into their office at the end of each day to let them know where you're at. Maybe they just want a bullet point list at the end of each week. Or maybe they just want you to verbally update them in your weekly progress meetings. I don't know. You have to ask them that. And then thirdly, I'd really want to understand what their summer schedule is. It's really a prime opportunity for them to go away on vacation. So when you're assigned a project to achieve the longer term project goals, you understand there's a lot of short-term objectives you must achieve, right, to achieve the longer-term goal. So I would, whenever assigned a longer-term project, map out a project timeline. Excuse me. So in that timeline, you're going to note all the things that you need throughout the course of the time that you have. And then from there, if you know you need key data or to be helpful, and you recognize that your manager is going away next week on vacation, that's probably going to be an opportunity for you to ask them for that data. Or, I realize that you're heading on vacation next week. As you know, I'm working on this project. I think this information would be really helpful to complete the project. where would you recommend I source that? Maybe they can point you in a different direction. The other thing I'd want to understand back to communication style is your manager someone when they're away on vacation, they're MIA, are they accessible? So if you did drop the ball and fail to ask them, how to get this information or data before they left on vacation, maybe while they're on vacation, you could follow up with them. I realize you're away. My apologies for, reaching out. As you know, I'm working on this project. Where would you recommend I find this data? And then, certainly if the project is for their eyes alone, they might say, you know what, let's hold off on that till I get back. And then you'll have that documented. And then lastly, adapt, as I've just mentioned. Again, I can't stress how important it is in week 1 that you meet with your manager. The last example, it's a different scenario than scenario 5, yet I feel that you manage it the same, right? Similarly. I think it's really important that you, again, I say it again and again, meet with your manager in week 1 to really understand expectations and how your success is going to be measured. Also, our founder, John Rice, always says, you want to observe the high performers. Who are the individuals that have gotten a lot of accolades, that people speak very highly of, that have gotten promoted quickly, that seem to be working on things that excite you? Observe what they're doing, and better yet, if you can meet with them to kind of tap their brain about what they've done to be deemed successful, certainly seize that opportunity. I think it's really important. It's kind of a metaphor I use for American healthcare. I feel that if we're feeling an ache or pain or experiencing a symptom, a lot of individuals want to just get, a medication or figure out a quick fix to alleviate the symptom. I think really that's an issue in and of itself. I think really what people should do is find out the cause. What is the cause of the symptom or symptoms, and then sort of resolve the cause. So I think if you're being underutilized, you want to first try to identify why before you can really solve the problem. So is it that your team is just too overwhelmed and busy to properly train you so you really can be an asset? Is it that they're unaware of your skills and what you're capable of doing and how you can add value? Or worse, do they deem you apathetic or disinterested or unexcited to be there? Or the worst of the worst, they deem you incapable or incompetent? If you made mistakes and they're worried you're going to make more. So I think it's important that you evaluate the why before you can really resolve it. And then lastly, just ensuring that you're always asking thoughtful questions. Again, you're going to meet with your manager in week 1 and ask great questions. I would request that you guys can meet weekly, even if it be for 15 minutes, or maybe every other week. And if they travel a lot, maybe it'll be virtually or via phone. But I think it's important that you kind of keep abreast of how you're doing. It's funny, a friend of mine in the fall thought he was up for a promotion, and he went to his performance review, his annual performance review, and he thought it went really well. And I said, tell me verbatim what was said. And it was a lot of generalities, like keep up the good work, you're doing a great job, you're on track. And I said to him, really, to be honest, that's common and it's on you. It's your responsibility to come to your reviews, to your meetings with your manager with a couple of thoughtful questions to extrapolate information that's very specific to you and that's actionable. So an example I often use on the CP team, we all have such different backgrounds and we all contribute, and we really are a team based on consensus. So let's say I create a curriculum assignment and I present it to the team. I'm not going to ask, what did I do wrong, or how could I do it better? But a common question I might ask is, based on your insights or your background, how might you have approached it differently? Or how might you approach it differently for your cohort? We share best practices quite a bit. So I think that's a great question, let's say for your manager, for your colleagues that maybe have done this before or longer than you. But just really think about thoughtful questions that you could ask. Not too many, but think of a few key questions you can ask in your review or in your progress meetings with your manager to ensure that you really understand where you're at. One example, kind of off the cuff, I want to share, back to networking and kind of broadening your brand. I had a fellow years ago, he took a tech support role at one of our partners. I kind of questioned why he took it. I didn't think it was going to excite him, but he convinced me that the firm was the right firm, it was the right culture, which I agreed. Within a couple of weeks in his internship, he recognized he wanted to instead do sales and trading. Very hard to transfer from tech support to sales and trading. But he networked so hard throughout the summer that towards the end of the summer, he actually got an interview for sales and trading. He went on the interview and he didn't do well. He bombed it. And I was so frustrated because I felt like he had worked so hard to get the opportunity. And then when game day came, he dropped the ball. So you want to make sure that you're not just lobbying for opportunity, that when you're given that opportunity, you're ready. So sometimes I say to people that really are eager for a promotion or an offer, sometimes, for a different role or whatnot, I think sometimes you have to almost demonstrate that you're doing that job already, sort of that next level job, before you can warrant getting promoted to that role or that job, if that makes sense, or assigned to that project. With that being said, my final message is, I love this picture. Plan your work, work your plan. And just in close, I've been running through with other fellows about the June assignment. It's pretty bulky. I emailed you very early about the June assignment to better understand. We want you to track your progress throughout the summer. So we did include what we call a brag book template. You need to download that, save that to your hard drive. And at this time, this early date, at the start of your internship, we just ask that you add 4 more competencies that are valued by the organization that you're being measured against. Add any alumni, MLT, or school alumni that you've met or are going to meet, and then any aspirational relationships, people that you hope to meet at this early date. And then weekly, you want to track your progress. If for whatever the reason this template doesn't work for you and you want to use something else throughout your summer, that's okay. But just to complete this MLT assignment, you will download that specific template. That'll take about 15 minutes, 20 minutes at most. Secondly, a lot of the CP coaches recommended videos to their cohorts. A lot of them were very, very long. I watched through all the videos and I picked anywhere from 2 to 5 minute excerpts of those videos to save you time. And then I created quiz questions in Canvas that associate with those specific videos. So you'll see there's 5 different questions with 1 or more videos for each that are applicable. Again, that assignment will take you about 30 minutes. Thirdly, we're moving from MBA Focus over to CareerLink, where you will need to just add your organization, your title, location, dates to your resume right now. Bullet points aren't required at this early date. And then complete a CareerLink profile and upload your resume to CareerLink. Again, that will take 15, 20 minutes. What's going to take much longer is the employer research document. You will download that. The first portion is just some preliminary data or info on your summer employer. The third is a SWOT analysis on your employer. Anybody interning and consulting, if instead of doing your employer, if you want to do maybe the client engagement you anticipate being on that industry, let's say it be healthcare or social sector or whatnot, you certainly can do that. The second piece is going to be downloading another document called a business canvas that you will populate. To complete those 3 sections in that business canvas document, or those 2 sections in the business, that's probably going to take at least an hour, maybe 90 minutes. So don't wait till the last minute. Make sure to map out your time to ensure that's completed by deadline. And that's all I had for you. I wish you the best of luck on your internship. Have a wonderful week.